Go ahead, Mark.
She should have one file to get started.
Yeah.
Ready when you are.
Call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 2nd, 2024 City of Kalispell Council meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Gabrielle.
Here.
Counselor Graham.
Here.
Counselor Dowd.
Here.
Counselor Dahlman.
Here.
Counselor Fisher.
Here.
Counselor Hunter. Counselor Nunnally.
Here.
Counselor Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Graham, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, council administration, we do have oaths of office. Ms. Brunkhorst? Can I have the 4 council members who were elected in the last election, please step forward? At least we think you were elected.
So far.
Certified.
Did you wear that nice shirt tonight?
And for class president in Whitefish.
Yeah.
I won with votes from
All
Florida.
right, go ahead and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Montana, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. So help me God. Thank you.
Okay,
You guys want a picture?
congratulations. Another 4-year sentence. Another item, I will ask for nominations from council for council president for the next year.
What's that?
Looking for nominations for council president. Mr. Nunnally?
I would like to nominate Chad Graham as president.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any other nominations? All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Mr. Graham, I'll have it noted you abstained.
Kind of.
All right. Agenda approval. Look for council for approval. Mr. Nunnally?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Mr. Carlson. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. No items on the consent agenda this evening, no committee reports. At this point in time, I open the meeting for public comment. Any individuals wishing to stand up and address the council, please step up to the podium, state your name, and give us your comments. And as usual, we'll move on to the first action item. First item is Resolution 6178, Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 through 6 preliminary plat. This item would approve the preliminary plat for Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 through 6, containing a total of 138 lots with single-family, apartment offices, and a commercial lot on 39.8 acres. Mr. Russell, staff presentation.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our senior planner, PJ Sorensen, to deliver the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. Spartan Holdings LLC has submitted a request for preliminary plat approval for Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 through 6, which is a major preliminary plat on approximately 39.8 acres of land, containing a total of 138 lots, 130 of which are single-family, 7 apartments/office, and 1 potential commercial lot. In addition, there'd be parks, roads, and open space. It's part of the Eagle Valley Ranch planned unit development, which overall is an approximately 107-acre mixed-use development, which was approved in 2018 and expanded in 2022. That included provisions for single-family, multifamily, and both office and commercial uses. The Phase 4 through 6 property is generally located on the east side of US Highway 93 North, to the north of Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 1 through 3, to the west of Ponderosa Estates, and approximately 225 feet to the south of Ponderosa Lane. There's utilities that are in Highway 93, as well as this utility map hadn't been updated, but there are water and sewer lines that extend up to the southern portion of the phases that we're looking at the preliminary plat for. As far as water, there's adequate capacity within the city's water system to serve the subdivision, particularly with the new water tank being constructed on the property adjoining the subdivision. In regard to sewer, the new sewer infrastructure will include a lift station in the southeast corner of the subdivision, which will be placed on a separate utility lot and dedicated to the city. Would also involve an analysis of any downstream lift stations and any necessary upgrades to those lift stations being completed by the developer. There's also adequate capacity within the city's sewer system to serve this subdivision. As a shot of the property looking to the north. Zoning on the property, current zoning is R3 and RA2 along with the PUD overlay. Growth policy shows it as suburban residential and urban mixed use. The growth policy encourages a variety of residential development that provides housing for all sectors and income levels within the community. This is showing the conceptual layout from 2018. You can see there's single family. These are the phases that are have been final platted and built on to a significant extent. There'd be apartment and office sites that would be off to the west, off the existing Phase 2. And then more single family that would be up towards the north, which is the main area we're looking at the preliminary plat for. With that extension in 2022, brought in this area, which had that existing Montana Home Fitters building, and basically designated this as a mixed-use area, which is reflected with the apartment and office lots that are being created as part of this plat. This is showing the layout. Again, they've got the platting done up to this point within single family extending up all the way to the northern extent of the project with those mixed-use properties extending out towards the highway. There would be entrance corridor standards that would apply. The zoning ordinance requires buffer areas along designated entrance corridors to the city. At this location, it's a 100-foot buffer. In the buffer area, there's a limited number of uses, and it's generally anticipated to be a landscaped area, but would include trails and utilities. When there's an existing structure, such as the Home Fitters building in the southwestern corner of the subdivision, the buffer can be reduced to accommodate the existing structure, and the 25-foot buffer is appropriate for that lot. However, Common Area 10, which is adjacent to Lot 164 in that stretch, should be widened to meet the 100-foot buffer requirement. The 100-foot buffer is provided with Park Area 1 along the northwestern boundary of the subdivision, and the specific design of each of the buffer areas would be subject to review and approval by the Parks Department. As for highway noise, under the subdivision regulations, where a subdivision in an RRA zone abuts a major arterial, such as Highway 93, noise mitigation must be incorporated to reduce the noise impacts to 60 decibels at the lot line. The applicant submitted a sound study, and this slide shows the existing condition with the 60 decibels coming in and extending into those lots. The study calls for the installation of an 8-foot tall berm or a 2-foot berm with a 6-foot sound wall along the western boundaries of the lots closest to the highway in the R3 area with the single-family residences, which would reduce the noise to the allowable amount. However, the report does not address the RA zone lots on either side of Jefferson Boulevard, which would be lots 162 to 165. The existing commercial building on the south side of Jefferson would not require noise mitigation because the noise mitigation requirements are intended to protect residential areas. Commercial development is considered one of the available mitigation techniques and can be incorporated into a mitigation plan. It's not known at this time what the specific uses on the other lots will be. Any non-residential use would not require mitigation, but any residential use, which would include multifamily, would require mitigation. So in order to address the noise mitigation requirement, any residential use on those lots would require a supplemental sound study and appropriate mitigation as part of the site review and building permit process, and a note should be placed to that effect on the final plat with the design of the noise mitigation measures to be reviewed and approved by the city prior to construction. Subdivision regulations also require a minimum of 0.03 acres of parkland per dwelling unit, which would be about 3.9 acres for the area subject to the plat or the equivalent value in land with improvements. Parkland for single-family lots is required at the time of final plat, and with the multifamily development, there would be 500 square feet of parkland per unit, again, or the equivalent, and that would be determined at the time of building permit. The applicant has submitted a conceptual park plan, which includes walking paths, 2 playground areas, and a picnic area, and the final plan would be subject to review and approval by the Parks Department with a prorated portion of the plan to be completed with each phase. Access for the subdivision would be provided by 2 connections to Highway 93 North, as well as an extension of Jefferson Boulevard from the south, which would connect to Rose Crossing and the traffic light at the highway, as well as Whitefish Stage to the east. The plans also provide for a future connection to Ponderosa Lane to the north, which is provided at that location there. That would not be connected to Ponderosa Lane, but there would be the connection provided for it. The connection was a condition of the PUD approval that required the provision of a future connection if desired by the Ponderosa Estates Homeowners Association, and they have indicated their preference for a connection point at this location. The connection is intended to allow Ponderosa to access services in Rose Crossing without going through the intersection of Ponderosa Lane and the highway. The new connection to the highway with Jefferson Boulevard will be subject to MDT review and approval. The developer will need to obtain an approach permit from MDT for the approach onto Highway 93 North. MDT would also review the highway frontage and determine if any upgrades to the frontage are required, and any required improvements would be installed by the developer. Internal to the subdivision, Jefferson Boulevard would be constructed as a collector street, and the remaining streets as local roads. Both would include full street profiles, which would include curb gutter, landscape boulevard with trees and a sidewalk. Lots fronting Jefferson Boulevard should have shared accesses unless they are able to meet access spacing guidelines. A traffic impact study was conducted by David E. Wooster and Associates, dated October of 23. Under city standards, the development would need to maintain or improve the existing level of service for the affected roadways, rather than simply maintaining an acceptable level of service. The TIS did conclude that there were decreases in service at several intersections, and that mitigation is required to accommodate the development. The TIS is currently under review by MDT and Public Works and has not yet been accepted. Prior to final plat, all mitigation required as part of the approved TIS would need to be completed, and all required improvements would need to be reviewed and approved by Public Works, MDT, or both as appropriate. And we did receive a third-party review that largely accepted the findings, at least as far as the city was concerned, with a few minor adjustments, including a deceleration lane on the highway. But MDT is still pending. And just to summarize the mitigation, when you're looking at Rose Crossing and Jefferson Boulevard, at that location, delays were identified, but there were no specific mitigation recommendations. At Highway 93 and Rose Crossing, there'd be a modification of lanes to create a dedicated left, a shared left and through lane, and a dedicated right, as well as modified signal timing. At Highway 93 and Eagle Valley Drive, at that location, there'd be no improvements. And then with Highway 93 and Jefferson, would likely be a 3/4 turn movement at that location. This is showing the phasing, working from phase 4, 5, and 6 as you go to the north. We did receive one written public comment prior to the hearing regarding impacts of the development. No public comments were received at the public hearing other than from the applicant. The Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt staff report KPP 23-11 as findings of fact, and that the preliminary plat for Eagle Valley Ranch phases 4 through 6 be approved subject to 41 listed conditions, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a few questions. One, if those commercial lots, if they were developed out at multifamily or mixed use, 7 lots, do we have some idea roughly how many multifamily units we'd be looking at there?
Well, we haven't seen any layout plans for that, so we're not sure what they're shooting for. Part of it is, fitting in within the overall PUD, and did we have a specific number on? Yeah. whatever they do would need to be in line with what the PUD is there, but we haven't seen any specific plans. We know that they're looking for a mix of offices with multifamily in there. Generally speaking, in an RA2 zone, you get one per 1,500 square feet.
In general, given the size of those lots, it's not going to be a significant amount of multifamily. Most of the multifamily is planned on the southern part of this development. Given the size of those, you probably wouldn't see more than 8 or 10 units per lot if they chose to go that route.
Okay. All right. And then I noticed in the planning board discussion, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but the shallow groundwater. And I've had this question, I guess, on some of the other developments with shallow groundwater. I'm not sure if I've raised it before, but do we have any knowledge or analysis about the impact of foundations on the flow or displacement of shallow groundwater? My primary concern is if there's areas that don't currently have shallow groundwater, might see shallow groundwater because of displacement of that shallow groundwater from this area.
Okay, so in this particular case, there is a provision in the subdivision regulations that says, if it's less than 5 feet of depth, then it's not considered subdividable unless you have mitigation measures. And they did have 2 mitigation measures as part of that. One was that you wouldn't have any basements on any lots unless you get a site-specific geotech that addresses that and mitigates that. The other one was to have at least 5 foot difference between finished floor and where the groundwater level would be.
And so both of those.
We do not have a study that says where the water goes based off of how much weight is put on top of it. We don't have that. I don't know if there's any study that has ever done that I'm aware of.
No, and I'm not thinking of weight, but the foundation if it gets down to that level of shallow groundwater.
Yeah, the foundation will be on grade, slab on grade. It's only going down very minimal. It's not going down into
the 5 feet.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions? Is there any public comment on Resolution 6178? See none, I'll look to council for a motion. Mr. Dowd.
Thanks, Your Honor. I move that we approve Resolution 6178, a resolution approving a request from Spartan Holdings LLC for approval of the preliminary plat for Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 to 6, a major subdivision preliminary plat consisting of approximately 39.8 acres with 41 conditions of approval.
Second, thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Motion second, any discussion on the motion? Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I just want to note that I appreciate seeing this is what I would consider more urban lot sizes for single-family residential development. I know some of the ones we've seen more recently have had a little bit bigger lot sizes. So I like to see that these are more what I consider urban lot sizes for single-family. Then just hoping to encourage developer that we see some multi-family units in on some of those commercial lots. Would be great to have mixed use, commercial on the bottom and residential on top. So I'd like to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Any other discussion? Can I have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nunley?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. Next item is Village Loop Mixed Use Conditional Use Permit. This item would approve a conditional use permit, excuse me, for the construction of 4 multifamily residential units as part of a mixed-use development located at 63 and 65 Village Loop. Mr. Russell, presentation.
The Mayor and Council, once again, I'll turn it over to PJ Sorensen, our senior planner, to deliver the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mayor Council. Peter Galenko, also doing business as Volga Rentals LLC, has applied for a conditional use permit to allow the construction of 4 multifamily residential units as part of a mixed-use development located at 63 and 65 Village Loop. The building's anticipated to be 2 stories tall with approximately 4,000 square feet of office space on the main floor and the 4 dwelling units on the second floor. The conditional use permits required for the multifamily units due to its location in an RA2 residential apartment/office zone. Under the zoning ordinance, 3 or more units in the same building or on the same lot are considered to be multifamily dwellings. As far as location, it's just right off the corner of Whitefish Stage and Evergreen Drive. There are utilities in the area with city sewer, which includes some sewer line running off the back end of the lot with the force main coming up from Village Greens. The water, there is public water, but it's evergreen water running through that area. Show the property, it's zoned RA2, which does allow for both office and multifamily residential as allowable uses within that zone. The growth policy designates the property as urban residential, and rezoning the property isn't necessary for this project. The growth policy does encourage a variety of residential development that provides housing for all sectors and income levels within the community. Showing the basic layout, you've got the building on the western edge of the lot up against Village Loop with the back end of the property and bluff off to that side. Parking lot on the northern side of the property with 19 parking spaces, which is the amount that's required for the proposed use. Garbage enclosure is shown here, but would need to get relocated in order to be accessible to public works. As I mentioned, there's sewer main that runs around the back end of that building that need to ensure that the city would still maintain access to that sewer main and would also need an additional easement for a connection that comes in from the back end of the property. There's no recreational amenities required with the 4 units because those only kick in with 5 or more residential units, and there's also no traffic impact study based on the number of units, which typically kicks in at closer to 30. The majority of the project site's relatively flat with no significant impediments, although the most significant development issue is the site's location on that steep bluff towards the rear of the property. The bluff area generally runs north-south and has a history of sloughing and instability both to the north and south of the site. The plans provide for placing the building away from the slope near the street, sitting approximately 40 feet away from the slope crest. The applicant did submit a geotech report, which included a slope stability analysis from Alpine Geotechnical. The report states that, quote, based on the information obtained from our subsurface investigation, the site can be properly developed for the proposed project with implementation of the recommendations contained in this report, unquote. In relation to the slope stability in particular, the report concluded that, quote, the proposed development will have no major impact on stability of the existing slope relative to the current design building setback under static conditions, unquote. The report includes several recommendations relating to design and construction activities that should be followed. Additionally, the building department will review the building plans and geotech report prior to issuing a building permit. Lastly, stormwater would be managed and constructed per the City of Kalispell standards for design and construction. Stormwater must be managed on site, and since the geotech report did not directly address stormwater, the design would need to incorporate recommendations from a geotech firm if infiltration is used in order to not negatively affect slope stability on the bluff. That's just showing the proposed elevations. No written public comment was received. One public comment was received at the public hearing, in addition to those statements by the applicant. The comment was concerned about stormwater, the slope, parking requirements, changes to the character of the area, and setting a precedent for mixed-use projects. With that, the Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission recommended that the City Council adopt Staff Report KCU 2306 as findings of fact, and that the conditional use permit be approved for the 4 multifamily dwelling units, subject to the 9 listed conditions. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff on this? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. Question about the slope stability and the stormwater. My understanding is there'll be a kind of a assessment moving forward about looking at that stormwater detention that hasn't been figured out yet and the slope stability. Do we know, have any estimate as how much time it would take for them to work that out and get that resolved?
Well, I would say that, as is the case with most CUPs or preliminary plats, we're really looking at conceptual type of a design. They know that they need to do an engineering layout of what that design is, which may or may not include infiltration, depending upon what their final design is on that. And as far as a time frame for it, I can't tell you what their construction timeframe is on that, but it's very typical. It'd be very unusual to have that amount of engineering detail figured out at this stage, so.
Sure. Yeah, it's just, the reason I ask is I noted in the conversation again at the planning board about the potential for redesign if there's needed, space for that stormwater detention facility, given the slope issues. And that, our it currently meets our parking standards, but with the new regs passed in the legislature, it would be one space per unit.
No, because that only applies in commercial zones, so it'd be our B zones. And this is an RA2 zone, so the one per wouldn't apply here.
Would not apply. Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions for staff? PJ, the green lines, that sewer line, is that what that is?
Right, coming in this back way, which is it's unusual to have that coming in the back end of the property rather than the street, but from what we can tell, that was installed before the subdivision was developed as part of Village Greens, and that just was where it was coming up through, so it's unusual, but
It's forced up there.
it's a force main that comes up, and that force main comes up
Comes up that
at
trail.
the back end of that property, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Is there any public comment related to the conditional use permit? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look to council for a motion. Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the request from Peter Yelenko, Volga Rentals LLC for conditional use permit KCU-23-06, a conditional use permit to allow 4 multi-residential units as part of a mixed-use development, subject to 10 conditions of approval located at 63 and 65 Village Loop, and more particularly described as lots 1A and 1B of Village Heights, according to the map or plat thereof on file and of record in the office of the Clerk and Recorder, Flathead County, Montana.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Gabriel. Discussion on the motion? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I just want a couple of comments that I really appreciate the mixed use, that we are having housing above commercial on this. I like to see that. And then also, I know we're not looking at a preliminary plat, but just the design of having the parking lot that's to the side rather than so much of what we see, and I think it's such a bad design, is having parking lots fronting the building to the street. Having this where the building comes up to the street and then the sidewalk off, or the parking off to the side is a better design, and I really like to see that, so I appreciate it.
Any other discussion? I think I'll just echo that I do like the design of this, tucking this building back in on the south, more adjacent to the old insurance building. I think is an effective use, and it does help protect from that slope, which, remember right when I first got on council, we had issues with that. So, yeah, I like the design and look forward to approving this. Can I have a roll call vote?
Counselor Gabrielle?
Aye.
Counselor Graham?
Aye.
Counselor Dowd?
Aye.
Counselor Dahlman?
Aye.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
Counselor Hunter?
Aye.
Counselor Nennally?
Aye.
Counselor Carlson?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye, motion carries. City manager report, Mr. Russell.
Hey, Mayor and Council, just have a few items. First one, following the legislative session, there's talk about different parameters going into place, most prominently Senate Bill 382. But there were some additional ones. I think I mentioned at one of the last meetings that those were being challenged in court. The courts have issued a preliminary injunction on implementing Senate Bill 323 and 528. Those are more the ADUs by right in a single-family zone. They intertwine with 382. 382 is not part of the injunction, but those other two were set to go into place mandatory January 1st. Naturally, those will proceed. We are taking the approach of, even though it violates our current zoning, if those came through, we would allow them to go through by state law. Well, now those are outside of state law, since they have the injunction, and those have enjoined municipalities from implementing those as well. So kind of back to where we have been currently as it relates to those specific legislative issues. Definitely more to come. This ruling just came out on Friday. So we'll naturally get some more information as time goes forward on those issues. Next one, in manager's report, put a note in there that the URA is recommending increasing our participations in some of our tax increment financing programs like facade improvements, cost shares on street trees, some of those components. Fairly straightforward. I was going to put it straight on an action item, but I thought I'd bring it up if council wanted to have a work session on it beforehand. Seems like all good, just going to regular action item. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? This is the limit, so it's not the budget. It's the kind of the max amount that's allowed.
Yeah,
Or-
participation and potentially, so like on our cost share, instead of 5,000 on street trees could be 10,000 type thing. Same thing with facade was one of the big ones. Kind of
Yeah,
doubling
in,
those.
in general, to increase most, so it doesn't just automatically allow that dollar amount. You still would have to apply and go through the process, but it just really, because of costs and increased costs, those dollar amounts weren't really that enticing, and nor would they really help, So the idea was, in general, across the board, about 100% increase, like we've seen in a lot of things, for the allowable dollar amounts is what was being proposed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll just plan on putting it on a upcoming regular agenda for action item then. And last item, so work session next week, have Senate Bill 355, which is some of their state, local infrastructure program funds. We have about $315,000 allocated directly to us this last session for repair and maintenance of existing infrastructure with a fairly broad definition. So we've met internally about kind of a list of projects. We'll bring that forward at a work session. Then we'll hold a public hearing on it per their requirements, and then we can apply by March 31st. So we'll just have a general work session on some of the projects that we've identified that could fit into that. And we'll, like I say, host a public hearing on it and proceed with that unless something else emerges. Also next week, following that, I'll just plan on going over our levy presentation. Just have it one before council. Also, we'll record it, have it on our website, and just kind of really kick off that educational programming. And following that, the next night, we'll be hosting the Chamber Unwind. So whoever's available, encourage you to come participate. Appreciate the Chamber working with us. We're not the traditional hosting entity for an unwind, but it seemed to fit right in really well to do that this month. And then in February, we'll be their luncheon for their Business Matters luncheon. So starting off on all of those education initiatives for the levy component.
Is there a quorum concern with that chamber function, even though it's in here?
Yeah, we'll post
Okay,
that there may be a chamber or there may be a quorum
okay,
present.
thanks.
Another reason why happy to announce it here that it shouldn't go a surprise. But yeah, we'll get it posted as well that there is a potential quorum. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything from council at the start of the year? I'm just gonna do what I always do. I'm just start down here and roll through.
I just have a couple really brief things. First off, Happy New Year. I'm looking forward to 2024. It can't be worse than 2023 in my mind.
You forget 2020?
I continually try to. But I also like to just have people hold on to their hats this year. It's going to be a flood of political games and ads. I just weather through it, and definitely both in your primary and in your general vote.
I'm already seeing the Shady Sid ads.
That actually helps me.
Jed, anything?
No, sir.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I just want to note, read an article in the paper this weekend talking about the real estate market, and I thought interesting information in there. I mean, it talked about the development in the valley and how obviously nearly all of it is happening in Kalispell relative to the other cities. And interestingly enough, they also looked at average home prices. And average home prices in Whitefish, Columbia Falls continued to go up over last year, whereas in Kalispell, it remained almost steady level. And I think that's potentially signs that our work is bearing fruit in terms of approval of more units to provide that supply and stabilize price. Also, I noted, our vacancy rate in rental housing has been basically 0%. I did read some research recently that talked about you really don't see kind of declining prices and rental prices until you start hitting around 6% vacancy rate. So I thought that was an interesting target that we could be looking at, trying to reach that 6% target or higher to try to bring down those rental prices. So I just wanted to make comment to some of those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Graham? No?
No.
Mr. Nunley?
No.
No? Carrie?
Yeah, just a couple things. I appreciated PJ being upfront on that, talking about the sloughing on that subdivision, because it wasn't just when you came on. This was way back when all those houses were gonna slide down henny penny and the sky is falling kind of thing. So that was great. And then I also found that article very interesting that Mr. Hunter mentioned, and I was also thinking, I wanted to remember the numbers that Mr. Nygren quoted too about the number of units coming online, and I'm wondering who's gonna live in all those units. I mean, we've got how many hundred coming on, and soon, who's gonna move in there? Do we know?
I don't know. That's, hopefully there's some shuffling around that happens, but yes, there's 800 units actively under
800,
construction.
thank you.
Yep. So that's in addition to the 900 that have already been built since 2019. 800 actively being built. Active COs or certificate of occupancies will be happening almost on a monthly basis throughout the year. So, if there is a demand out there, it surely there's going to be a place for people to go or move around or however that works out. But, I think there's people all over the valley, all over the county. There's a lot of people traveling a long distance. So, they may not be coming from the valley. They could be coming from Eureka. They could be coming from Libby. There's people commuting a ways as well. So we'll see. But, yeah, it's a lot of units.
And none of it is designated affordable, correct?
No, about 160 units are
Okay.
or income restricted.
Okay.
You got Creekside and Junegrass. And Junegrass and Creekside are both, so Junegrass is like their first building will be getting certificate of occupancy shortly as well. And then Creekside as well. So yeah, there'll be a number of affordable units hitting the market this year.
Thank you.
There's a lot of people also that are living in campers where, I've seen several places where people are taking their property and converting it over to like RV pads and stuff just to go through and meet that need for the people that are like just kind of hovering and waiting for, and that's where that discussion comes in about the tiered approach for all housing, helps with affordable housing. So, yeah.
Okay, and I just have a couple things. One, Mr. Russell, I sent you that district court order, so I don't know if you want to send that to the council, but I really particularly enjoyed getting this and reading the name. Montanans Against Irresponsible Densification LLC versus the state of Montana. And when you read through this, it's a lot of the discussion items that we had at this council level, maybe the judge is watching our meetings, I don't know, but it's pretty interesting reading. I encourage everybody to take a look. One other thing, and I have mixed emotions about this. I'm a mayor of a city, but I'm also a taxpayer in the state of Montana. So there's a little like I said, mixed emotions on the failure to have a special session. As a taxpayer is a little frustrated that the House and the Senate couldn't come together for a special session to try to address some of the real estate tax issues, especially since the governor decided to sue the counties and collect all the money for colleges and the additional wherever else it goes and that he likes to use it. But as a mayor, I was thankful because I figure anytime this group gets in session, we're under attack. So it was with mixed emotions, and I guess at this point, I'll gladly pay the additional taxes versus having this group get together and decide how they're going to bash us one more time. So as I look at this, I think they failed to come back to do the job they should have done at the start when they were in session. So as I think back to when the governor said, no, you don't get a pay raise, maybe he was prescient with that because it was well advised we're not getting what we're paying for. And we darn well wouldn't be getting what we paid for if we gave him a raise. Then with this stay, excuse me, and after reading the judge's writing, it's a pretty direct attack on the governor's initiative, really on housing that I don't really believe is that effective to begin with. But when I look at that, I also kind of wonder, wow, I'm glad the governor donates his salary because as taxpayers, we're not getting our money's worth out of what we pay him either. So at least somebody's getting some benefit. And with that great opening to the year, I'm going to close the meeting.
Throw a photo.